teeny tiny bit about any lawn anywhere. I kind of enjoy dandelions. I love creeping Charlie. I think garlic mustard are cute little white flowers, and even the purple flowers that grow on thistles I find attractive. But I'm surrounded by neighbors who really do care about their lawns. So I decided I have to have a lawn treatment service come in 5 times a summer to spread weed killers, sow grass seed where it's needed, and aerate the lawn in the fall. That way, I don't allow the weeds in my yard to spread their seeds to the yards of the neighbors. And I'm also not embarrassing the church too badly. Now, I have to admit, at first I really struggled with the decision to spend the money on the lawn care until a colleague pointed out to me some basic truths of our faith. Jesus believed the truth that all people were created in the image and likeness of God, that all people are equally made and equally loved by our God. And Jesus said the second of the 2 great commandments is that we should love our neighbors as much as we love ourselves. And put together, those basic truths by which Jesus lived, taught, and behaved meant I had to care for my yard in ways that showed my respect and love for my neighbors. So I have a lawn treatment center service come in to care for the yard to show my respect and love for my neighbors and their regard for their yards. You see, Jesus lived and embraced those truths. Jesus treated all people as equally made and equally loved by God. Jesus treated his neighbors with the same respect and same love with which he treated himself. He taught his first followers to embrace and live those truths. And I believe he still expects his followers today to embrace and live those truths. Now, 1 Peter was writing to Christians, and this was only the 2nd time in the Bible where followers of Jesus were called Christians. He was writing to Christians who were living in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, soon after the turn of the 1st century. Christians were very different from their Roman neighbors. Christians worshiped one unseen living God, while their Roman neighbors worshipped many gods, many idols, and even Caesar. Christians did not speak the same language. They didn't eat the same food. They didn't do business with their Roman neighbors. As a result of those differences, Romans treated their Christian neighbors pretty badly, and Christians really did not like their Roman neighbors very much. Now, Romans did not believe that all people were made in the image and likeness of God. In fact, Romans believed that they were superior to all people. They believed that might made right, and Rome was the mighty empire. Romans may have helped their friends and their families if they needed help, but other people, they weren't that special. In fact, other people were possible threats to their resources and their might, their power. The community didn't really matter. Romans were taught those who were the strongest, those who were the wealthiest, and those who were the most powerful individuals could really do whatever they wanted to do, whether it was good for anybody else or not. So Christians experienced a deep divide between the truths their Roman neighbors embraced and the truths by which they lived. As minority, really minority immigrants, their truths weren't valued one tiny bit. In fact, Christians were regarded as atheists, as not very good members of the Roman Empire. So Christians were treated badly by their Roman neighbors. Even so, 1 Peter expected them to live the truths of their faith and to treat Romans with respect and love. So 1 Peter wrote to Christians, reminding them they had made the decision to follow the truths of Jesus in their lives. 1 Peter reminded Christians that Jesus taught all people were equally made and equally loved by God. He reminded them, that Jesus taught his followers to love their neighbors as much as they loved themselves. That God didn't just care about them, that God had made and cared for and loved everyone. Therefore, Christians could not just do things for themselves. They couldn't make decisions that were only good for them. They had to make decisions that were good for everyone. Because they weren't any more special or loved than the Romans. Their individual rights were not any more important than anyone else in the community. In fact, their rights were equal to the well-being of the community. Those were core truths that Jesus taught and the core truths by which Jesus lived. And those truths are still the basic truths for those of us who follow Jesus today. However, rather than respond to the truths of our faith, our society has chosen to stage numerous battles between the rights of the individual versus the well-being of the community. We saw that battle take place in Madison and Milwaukee last weekend as individuals took to the streets to protest the governor's safe-at-home restrictions. Those protesting believed that their rights as individuals were being trampled under the guise of caring for the well-being of the community. One person, in fact, said during the interview that if she became ill, it was her problem. If her family became ill, it was her family. So this individual was far more concerned about her rights than the well-being of the community. Her truth said, "Me and my rights are most important." Her truth was, "My behavior does not affect others, and frankly, it's none of their business." Rather than discuss the truths of our faith, we have turned these kinds of differences in our points of view into political debates. We have allowed individual rights versus community well-being to become a political argument in everything from civil rights up to the effects of this virus. Even so, this is not a political issue any more than caring for my lawn is a political issue. The truths of our faith are the issue. The actions we take based on the truths of our faith are the issue. And Jesus was quite clear about his basic truths. Everyone is created equally and loved equally by God, and loving our neighbors is just as important as loving ourselves. But that doesn't make living the truths of our faith any easier. For instance, I was raised to go to work in health and in sickness. As far as my mother was concerned, there was no health reason to stay home from school or work at all, because going to work was my responsibility. Staying home was not acceptable. And I gotta tell you, those are truths that still roll around in my brain today. Even so, if I love my neighbor Luann in the next office, I need to stay home when I am sick, and I gotta tell you, that's hard for me. But the only way to love her as much as I love myself is to stay home when I'm not feeling well. Not only that, when others are sick, whether I need them to be at work that day or not, the only loving action I can take is to insist that they stay home. I gotta tell you, some days my mother's version of the truth is a lot louder in my head than the truths Jesus taught. Living the truths of our faith is not always easy. The battle between individual rights and the well-being of the community is a battle being fought in a variety of arenas in our public life. Anyone living in a condominium knows that battle. The individual may want to put up a spotted cow mailbox in front of their home, but the condominium association says, no, all mailboxes must be the same because uniformity ensures better home values. Uniformity is better for the community's well-being. Many of us have become accustomed to arguing politics, while most of us have become accustomed to avoiding political arguments. But rather than argue politics, which of late is a no-win situation, I invite us instead to look at the truths of our faith that will have something to say about every situation we are facing in our lives, in our county, in our nation, and in our world. When a disagreement arises, rather than argue a party platform against another party platform, which again is a no-win situation nowadays, let's look at the truths that Jesus taught us that apply to the issues found in the disagreement. Because when we start to talk about the truths that Jesus taught us and lived and expects us to live, we already have common ground. Even with people who are not Christian, if we start to talk about the basic principles by which Jesus lived and taught, we will find common ground with whatever faith they practice. So if we look at the issues of faith, we will discover we have common ground. All people are created equal. All people are equally loved by our God. And loving our neighbor is as important as it is to love ourselves. I started using the lawn treatment service the second summer I came to Manitowoc. I didn't do it for myself. I still don't do it for myself. Because if I were caring for the yard by myself, it would be a mess. The neighbors would be fighting every single weed known to humankind. Instead, the lawn looks a lot better. It's not great, but it's a lot better. But it took someone reminding me of the truths Jesus taught to get me to do the right thing. And that's just one small example of how loving our neighbor as much as we love ourselves can make a difference in our lives and in our world. Friends, this time apart gives us the space to start thinking about all the ways the truths of our faith could solve a lot of our individual, collective, and international problems. Rather than argue politics, I invite us to start talking about and studying how to live the truths of our faith. Because those are the truths that will truly, truly change our world. Amen.